What's up guys, Josh Fossgreen back at you with some bass in your face. Today we're going to start a 4-part video series on playing 7th chords on the bass guitar. Today we're going to learn how to play minor 7th chords, and then the following 2 weeks we'll learn dominant and major 7 chords, and then we're going to put it all together in the 4th lesson with the jazz standard Autumn Leaves, and we're going to learn how to play through that progression using these 7th chord voicings we learn. And each week we're also going to learn a cool little ditty that I've made up using the chord voicings so you can play around with them in a musical context rather than just practicing chord voicings. So all you need to follow along today is the free PDF, which you can get by clicking the link below in the description. That will take you to my website, and then there will be a link right there to download it directly. No email address or signups or anything required. Okay, so today we're learning the minor 7 chord, which is a chord that comes from the arpeggio of either a minor scale or, more often in a jazz context especially, the Dorian scale, which is the second mode of the major scale. So a minor 7 chord, in theory, is made up of a root, which today is going to be B. We're going to be in the key of B minor. It's got a root, a minor 3rd, which is a D, perfect 5th, which is an F sharp, and a minor 7th, which is an A. So that's the arpeggio of the 7th chord. But what we're going to do today is actually play it as a chord. We're going to learn a couple different voicings to do that. So, like I just said, the 7th chord arpeggio is made up of a root, 3rd, 5th, and a 7th, but the voicings we're going to learn today in both cases do not include the 5th, and that's going to be true of the following weeks as well. And the reason I've done that is for ease of playing, and also because if you're going to leave one note out of a 7th chord, the 5th is generally the note that's cool to do that with, because a 5th is not really a defining feature of a chord unless it's been altered in some way, like in an augmented triad or a diminished triad or a half diminished 7 chord or something. So if you've got a perfect 5th, it's totally cool to leave it out of a chord, so that's what we're going to do in these voicings. So let's dig into this first voicing. First note, these are all on the 7th fret. First note is a B on the E string with your 2nd finger. Second note is an A on the D string with your 3rd finger, and then a D on the G string with your 4th finger. So your fingers are all stacked on the same fret, and your pinky's kind of tucked in behind your ring finger. And the reason we're going to use that specific fingering is in this little reggae tune we're going to learn today with the minor 7 voicings. You'll be able to use some common fingers when we change chords. Okay, so that's your basic E string root minor 7 chord. You can just practice moving that around, get comfortable with the shape. You can mess with the alternate fingering would be to start with your 1st finger and then go 1, 2, 3. That's your basic minor 7 chord. Now if we want to put the root on the A string, we're going to bring that 3rd back into the octave, so we're going to go root, 3rd, and then up to the 7th. So I'm up an octave here, so I've got B with my ring finger on the A string on the 14th fret, 1st finger on a D on the D string on the 12th fret, and then my pinky on the 14th fret of the G string on an A. So that's the A string root shape for a minor 7 chord. And again, you can move that around, and wherever you move it on the neck, whatever the lowest note is you're playing with the voicing is the root, because these are all root position voicings. There's no inversions happening. Okay, so those are your 2 basic positions for minor 7th chord. And also just a quick note, since I've left the 5th out of these, you can also use this voicing for half diminished 7th chords, which when we get to Autumn Leaves next week, you actually will see one of those. And the only difference between a minor 7 and half diminished is that the half diminished has a flat 5th coming from the Locrian mode. So let's just give this little reggae progression a try. We're just going to take the 2 voicings we just learned and take it through a few different basic chord changes in the key of B minor. So let's just do this at tempo together. It's not too fast, and the rhythm's very repetitive. I'll just say before we start, for the plucking on this, because you might not be used to plucking chords, there's 2 ways you can approach it that I'm aware of. One, which is what I tend to do, is to do thumb and fingers plucking. So your thumb plucks your low notes, which is the root note in these voicings. And then your index and middle finger pluck the 3rd and 7th. So thumb, fingers. The alternative, if you're not comfortable with that thumb plucking, is just anchor your thumb on your pickup like you normally would when you're plucking, and then use your index finger for the low root notes, and use your 2nd and 3rd finger for the higher notes of the chord. two basic right hand options. Let's just get into this with this groovy little reggae groove. 1, 2, 3, 4. So at first that'll probably feel a little uncomfortable to try to get yourself to move from chord to chord. You know, it's not so hard to just plunk your fingers down and get the chord, but to actually switch back and forth can be a little tricky. So what you can do, like for that first chord change going from B minor with the E string root to F sharp minor with the A string root, is you can just practice going back and forth, like get rid of the rest of the progression, and just practice doing that with your left hand, going back and forth between those two voicings until it starts to get more comfortable and you can get your fingers in position more quickly. But honestly, you know, you might be sitting there struggling for a while, because normally when you play bass, you're just playing one note at a time, so it's a limited amount of coordination your hand has to do. To play a chord, 3 fingers have to be doing the right thing at the right time, so it's just a different type of coordination. So if you're not used to playing chords, be patient with yourself, and eventually the voicings will feel really second nature. And the more chord voicings you learn, the more comfortable you'll be. So it's no big deal if it's hard at first. Another quick thing I want to say on this before we move on to the inversion of this progression is the reason that I have us switching from E string roots to A string roots through this progression. So we're starting on the E string root for the B chord, and then we're playing the A string position for the F sharp minor, F minor, and E minor chords. The reason I'm doing that is for something called voice leading, which is that if you want your chord progressions to sound smooth, you want to have as little movement as possible between the tones of the chords. So if I were to stick with only the E string position shapes for all these chords, the progression would like... See how that big jump across the neck? So that means that all the tones of the chord are jumping up a whole fifth. Whereas if I switch to the A string shape for the F sharp minor chord, I can actually keep that A there as the third of the F sharp chord, and then that D on top of the B chord only has to move up to an E for the F sharp minor chord. So that's called smooth voice leading, and if you want your chord progressions to sound less jerky and smoother, it's something you want to aim for. So with all the little ditties we're going to learn in this 4-part series, I've optimized them for smooth voice leading, and that's how we're going to learn autumn leads as well. But of course, you can always mess with doing it with not smooth voice leading. You know, play the same thing. There's nothing wrong with non-smooth voice leading. It's just something to be aware of, and you want to be good at doing both things, smooth voice leading and moving in more like block chords, like you would if you were just like, you know, playing Smoke on the Water or whatever. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do before we finish up today is we're going to play that exact same progression, B minor, F sharp minor, F minor, E minor, back to B minor, but this time we're just going to start on the A string root for the B minor chord instead of the E string root, which means that then we're going to use E string roots for the next 3 chords of the progression. So hopefully that makes sense. Here we go with the last exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent work. I just want you to notice the fingering on this, the way I've instructed you to do it on the PDF, where you're doing second finger, third finger, fourth finger for the E string chords, and third finger, first finger, fourth finger for the A string chords. You'll notice going from that B minor to that F sharp minor, your pinky actually stays on the same note. And you're free to tweak that as you want. Like you could do second finger, first finger, fourth finger on the A string chords, and then you'd actually be able to just move your middle finger back and forth. So whenever you're doing chord progressions, it's always about finding whatever fingering works best for you and is most efficient. You know, if you've got a common tone between two chords, then maybe you can play that tone with the same finger on both chords. Okay, last thing for today is once you're comfortable with this progression, it's a great opportunity to improvise and practice coming back to those chord voicings, because it turns into kind of a cool little solo bass type thing, or like a bass and drums thing. Here's an example. 4. So you can just mess around like that, you know, if you know the modes that go with each of these chords, which I'll just say real quick. You can use a B minor, and then you can use an F sharp phrygian, or you can just use an F sharp minor, then an F minor, and then an E minor, or an E dorian would be even better, because then you've got that major 6 turns into the 9th of the B minor chord. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry. My main thing is I just want to teach you the voicings in this video, but if you know the modes, then you can use this as a fun basis for improv too, and the voicings give you something to bounce back to. Alright, that's it for this video. Next week we will move on to major 7th chords, which are another type of 7th chord that you should know, and we're going to learn a cool little song to go with that as well, and be sure to stick around for this 4-chord series. The best way you can do that is to subscribe to this channel, and you will know about when new videos come out, and won't that be wonderful for you? If you'd like to support these lessons and continuing, you can check out Patreon, or you can donate through my website. And I also just put out a book. It's not exactly related to 7th chords, but I just feel like I should tell you because it just came out. It's called Beastly Scales and Arpeggios, and you can see those Beastly Arpeggios videos on my channel. I'll probably put little links in front of my face while I'm talking right now. And if you're into those exercises, you can check out that ebook as well. A lot of people have done that, and I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you soon.